Imagine a young woman humiliated in a courtroom, her voice trembling, her dignity stripped away by a smug officer. Yet years later, she returns not as a defendant, but as the powerful new district attorney, ready to rewrite justice. This is her unforgettable journey of resilience and triumph. Stay tuned. A police officer humiliated a black girl in court until she returned as the new district attorney. Her voice shook as she pleaded her innocence, but the judge barely looked up. The officer stood at the witness stand, smirking, accusing her of a crime she didn't commit. He mocked her, questioned her character, and left her in anguish before a silent courtroom. No one stood up for her, not even those she trusted. Shamed and betrayed, she was forced to walk into the world labeled a liar, a criminal. But fate had an unexpected twist. Years later, she returned with unimaginable strength, not as a defendant, but as the one deciding others' fates. She was the new district attorney. Morning light streamed through the high windows of the old courthouse. The first spectators settled onto creaky wooden benches awaiting the trial's start. Tense chatter filled the room as lawyers wrapped up last-minute talks, adjusted their suits, and sifted through papers. The bailiff stood near the front, arms crossed, watching everything with a calm expression. At the defendant's table sat young Sarah Brooks, just 19, her braided hair neatly pinned back, her eyes brimming with anxious innocence. She wore a simple white blouse and black slacks, trying her hardest to look polished, in a place where appearances mattered immensely. Her stomach churned, not because she'd done anything wrong, but because the entire process was stacked against her. Moments later, the judge entered robe, rustling, and the room fell silent. Then the officer who arrested her appeared, a tall, muscular man named Officer Thompson. He had large hands and a piercing stare. As he took the stand, a smug grin spread across his face. He'd targeted her a month earlier. Sarah had accidentally rolled through a stop sign while rushing to pick up her little sister from a friend's house. She'd never been in trouble with the law, not even a speeding ticket. But that night ended with Sarah in handcuffs, shoved into the back of a patrol car, tears streaming down her face. When the prosecutor called Officer Thompson to testify, he recounted the incident with chilling calmness, but then he went further, mocking Sarah's character. He implied she was up to no good, called her aggressive, and suggested her attitude, problem stemmed from her background. His words dripped with racism and contempt, and with each jab, Sarah felt the courtroom's eyes burn into her. No one intervened. The judge pretended not to notice. The prosecutor urged Thompson to provide more lurid details, and Sarah, heart-pounding, realized they weren't even trying to be on her side. The most humiliating moment came when Thompson openly questioned her motives for being out late that night. "You know how they are," he declared, pointing at Sarah. "Some people think they're above the law." His gaze lingered on her skin, the implication clear to everyone. Gasps echoed through the gallery, but no reprimand came from the judge. He merely cleared his throat and moved on. That was the moment Sarah grasped a brutal truth. She wasn't there to seek justice. She was there to be humiliated. She felt betrayed by the very system meant to protect her. With her parents unable to afford a high-priced lawyer, she faced the ordeal alone. Sitting in the defendant's chair, cheeks, burning eyes stinging with tears, she silently vowed that if she survived this horrific day, She'd do everything in her power to challenge the system that had callously tried to destroy her. Though Sarah avoided jail time, the judge convicted her of reckless driving and imposed a hefty fine. More painful was the public humiliation. As she left the courtroom, people whispered and stared. The memory of Officer Thompson's smirk would haunt her for years, an injustice etched into her mind. Her parents waited in the hallway outside. Her mother looked distraught. Her father looked defeated. They'd taught Sarah that hard work and a clean record would pave the way to success and respect. But that day proved that sometimes prejudice could overshadow everything else. She felt a deep betrayal in her soul, how society had failed her, how the institution meant to uphold justice had turned a blind eye. Her father wrapped her in a comforting embrace. "We'll get through this," he said, but his voice trembled, revealing his uncertainty. Sarah tried to breathe, tried not to break down right there in the hallway, but with every step, the shame of being publicly branded a troublemaker haunted her. From that day forward, she refused to see herself as a victim, but the emotional scars lingered. Sarah had grown up dreaming of studying law, a dream nurtured by her father's bedtime stories about great civil rights lawyers who changed the world case by case. But now she wondered if the system was worth her devotion. Bitterness threatened to eclipse her idealism, to dim everything she'd ever hoped for. Worse, a cousin named Emily, close in age, and someone Sarah deeply trusted began whispering behind her back. Emily sided with the rumor mill, saying, maybe Sarah was hiding something. Maybe she was reckless all along. It felt like a knife to Sarah's chest. Family was supposed to stand by you, especially when injustice was so blatant. But Emily's ambition to climb the social ladder, interning at a local politician's office, outweighed loyalty. Sarah learned of this betrayal through a mutual friend, who felt uneasy hearing Emily imply Sarah might have been dealing drugs or involved with a gang. None of it was true, of course, but rumors could be deadly. They spread like wildfire, eroding Sarah's reputation in the community. The grief of losing a family bond weighed heavily on her. At this point, her college scholarship was in jeopardy. The minor criminal record from the reckless driving conviction flagged her file for behavioral review. Despite her academic excellence, the scholarship committee now questioned her integrity. She was on the verge of losing the only financial support she had. Sarah tried to explain the injustice of the entire situation, but the committee merely nodded, flipping through pages of official reports. That same sickening feeling returned. She was being judged, not for who she was, but for a stereotype forced upon her. Yet amid the chaos, a kind professor named Dr. Helen Carter stepped in. Recognizing Sarah's intellectual potential and empathizing with her plight, Dr. Carter became her mentor. One late evening, Sarah found herself in Dr. Carter's cozy office, lined with books on social justice ethics and civil rights movements. The dim lamp flickered on the professor's reading glasses as she looked at Sarah with understanding. "Sarah," she said gently, "this path will be tough. Sometimes the system is as broken as we fear. But if you walk away, now, if you let them steal your future, they win twice. You're strong and brilliant. Fight your way through." Tears welled in Sarah's eyes. She poured out everything to Dr. Carter: the humiliation, her cousin's betrayal, the scholarship committee's threats. Dr. Carter assured her she'd recommend Sarah for a private grant. It was a slim hope. Thanks to Dr. Carter's advocacy and a well-documented appeal highlighting Sarah's impeccable academic record and volunteer work with youth programs, Sarah narrowly kept her scholarship. The committee placed her on probation, requiring her to maintain high grades and a clean record. Though stressful, it was a chance, one she was determined not to waste. Just as Sarah began to regain her footing, fate dealt another blow. The local law firm she'd hoped to intern with Baxter and Reed abruptly rescinded her offer. Despite leading the application process, she received a curt email. "We regret to inform you that we're moving forward with other candidates." Deep down, Sarah suspected it was because rumors of her legal troubles had spread. She tried calling, leaving messages, seeking an explanation, but was met with silence. This was the second major betrayal, not from family, but from the professional world she saw as her gateway to the future. Frustrated and angry, she wanted to lash out. But then something unexpected happened. An up-and-coming civil rights law group called Fairpath Justice offered her an unpaid internship. It wasn't the prestigious firm she'd eyed, but they admired her passion and crucially didn't judge her for a single negative incident. This sudden shift felt like a lifeline. Though the role offered no pay, Sarah jumped at it. That summer, she immersed herself in their advocacy campaigns, volunteering in underserved communities, and observing how lawyers fought systemic racism in practical, fierce ways. There, Sarah witnessed firsthand the countless ways everyday people suffered under prejudice's weight. Elderly renters unjustly evicted job applicants, rejected for their names, teens profiled by police for their skin color. The fire of anger within her found direction. She resolved not just to become a lawyer, but to change the system from within. She wouldn't let the shame of that courtroom define her story. Near the end of that summer, Sarah's world collided with Officer Thompson again. During one of her internship's community outreach events, a workshop on knowing your rights. He appeared in uniform ostensibly for public relations. Sarah froze when she recognized him. The memory of his courtroom mockery still burned in her soul like a wound. But what shocked her was that he didn't seem to remember her at first. He was too busy exchanging pleasantries with event organizers who didn't know his true character. At some point, though, his eyes locked on her, and she saw a faint flicker of recognition. His lips curled into the same sneer that haunted her nightmares. "I remember you," he whispered with a smirk, leaning forward so only she could hear. "Nice to see you've turned your life around." Then he winked, dripping condescension. It was a blatant power move, reminding her he could belittle her any time. Sarah's fists clenched. Rage trembled through her body, but she forced herself to stay composed. She realized Thompson wasn't just a bad apple. He embodied a system that thrived on people like Sarah, staying silent and small. Summoning all her resolve, she stared him down and said nothing. But in her heart, she vowed that one day she'd have the power to hold him accountable. As Sarah pressed on, tragedy struck her family. Her father, who'd been her emotional rock, suffered a heart attack. The stress of providing for the family, paying legal fees, and grappling with the prejudice Sarah faced had taken its toll. He survived, but massive medical bills devoured their modest savings. For a time, Sarah considered dropping out of college to work full-time. This was her secret struggle balancing her father's recovery, her precarious scholarship, and her unwavering desire to advance in the legal world. Her mother stepped up, taking extra shifts at a local diner. Sarah's younger sister, Lily, started a part-time job at a grocery store after school. The family rallied together, refusing to let this setback bury them. They faced financial hardship, but their spirit of unity grew stronger. Meanwhile, Sarah juggled academics, her unpaid internship, and hospital visits. Exhaustion set in. She barely slept. But every time she felt like collapsing, she remembered her father's words. "Never give up, my little warrior," one evening on the brink of emotional collapse. Sarah found solace from an unexpected source. She stayed late at Fairpath Justice's office preparing a presentation on voting rights. A seasoned lawyer named James Carter approached her. James was known for being fierce in the courtroom, but reserved, almost aloof in private. Sarah had never spoken much with him, intimidated by his reputation as a legal pit bull. But that night, he asked directly about her father's condition, then about her own struggles. Something in her story softened him. He pulled a chair beside her and shared his own youth, how he'd joined the Marines after high school to escape poverty, only to return and face countless doors slammed shut due to racism. He'd clawed his way into law school. The system had tried to crush him too. "I see your fire, Sarah," he said. "You remind me of myself. Don't let them break your spirit. If you want to change things, you've got to play the long game." He promised to teach her the intricacies of legal strategy, how to navigate the court's labyrinth. This was a new turning point, an unforeseen alliance with a formidable mentor. Months later, Sarah uncovered something staggering while helping James research a case. Multiple complaints had been filed against Officer Thompson over the years for excessive force, particularly targeting minority communities. The records weren't easy to find, buried in a sea of paperwork, some sealed or lost in bureaucratic chaos. But as Sarah pieced them together, a disturbing pattern emerged. Thompson had a history of racially motivated stops and arrests, often leading to dubious charges that went nowhere. James and Sarah presented their findings to senior attorneys at Fairpath Justice. The team decided it was time for a bigger confrontation. They planned to file a formal complaint with the police department's Internal Affairs Division and push for a public hearing. Sarah's heart raced with both hope and dread. She felt a personal duty to see Thompson held accountable, not just for her own humiliation, but for all the others who might not get a second chance. When the public hearing was announced, the department swiftly circled the wagons. Fairpath Justice began receiving anonymous threats. Community members who'd once cooperated grew fearful, worried they'd be targeted next. Some local politicians, including Emily's boss, labeled their efforts as anti-police propaganda. Instead of investigating Thompson's potential misconduct, they rallied to protect him. In a shocking revelation, Emily appeared on a local news segment defending the police. She dismissed Fairpath's complaints as one-sided narratives. Watching her own kin oppose the truth felt like a betrayal that left Sarah reeling. Tears welled as she watched the broadcast, furious that Emily was willing to ignore facts for political gain. The pain was raw, but it also fueled Sarah's resolve. This was bigger than family. It was a fight for justice. Behind the scenes, James was devising a plan. He'd located a long-lost witness. Michael Evans, who'd been wrongfully arrested by Thompson years earlier. Michael had served 6 months on false charges before evidence proved he'd been framed. He'd vanished from public view, believing no one would fight for him. But James convinced him to testify at the hearing, confident his story would add damning weight to the charges against Thompson. This could change everything. James told Sarah one late night at the office, a solid testimony like Michael's could shift public opinion. We just need him safe and ready to speak. But there was a catch. Thompson had previously threatened Michael's family, and Michael feared retaliation. Sarah spoke to Michael herself, reassuring him that fair path justice would protect him. She visited him at his rundown apartment, meeting his wife and 2 young daughters. His dire financial situation and the anxiety in his eyes reminded Sarah of her own fear in court years ago. She looked him in the eye. "We can't guarantee no one will retaliate, but I promise we'll do everything in our power to keep you and your family safe. If we don't stand up now, Thompson will keep doing this forever." With that plea, Michael agreed to come forward. On the day of the internal hearing, tension was palpable. Protesters gathered outside City Hall holding signs demanding accountability. A crowd of police supporters stood across the street, chanting slogans, decrying activists as unpatriotic. The atmosphere crackled with hostility. Sarah's palms were sweaty as she clutched a binder filled with months of research. Inside, Michael Evans was ready to testify, but minutes before his turn, he received a threatening text, a photo of his daughters walking to school, paired with a chilling warning, "Keep your mouth shut." Panicked, he turned to James, voice trembling, saying he couldn't go through with it. He had to protect his family. Sarah's heart sank. She knew if Michael backed out, their strongest evidence might collapse. Then, in one of the most unexpected turns, Michael's wife, whom Sarah had met, stood up. She insisted that silence only perpetuated the cycle. "If we back down, now this will never end," she whispered to her husband, tears glistening in her eyes. Something in that moment stirred Michael, and he realized that protecting his daughters today through silence might doom them to face the same injustice tomorrow. With shaky resolve, he took the stand and delivered a gripping testimony about Thompson's corruption and racism. His words shook the room. Reporters scribbled furiously, the audience whispered, and internal affairs, investigators exchanged uneasy glances. For a brief moment, it felt like justice might prevail. The panel appeared sympathetic. Thompson scowled, and Sarah felt a spark of triumph. Perhaps the tide had finally turned, but in a cunning move, the police department's attorney introduced new evidence, purportedly discrediting Michael's testimony, twisting half-truths to paint him as an unreliable witness. Thompson's service record was paraded, lauding him as a dedicated officer with numerous commendations. The hearing became a spectacle where the victim was put on trial instead of the accused. By the session's end, the panel ruled there wasn't enough evidence to pursue disciplinary action against Thompson, at least not yet. Disappointment crushed Sarah as she stepped into the hallway, hearing Thompson's mocking laughter behind her. The betrayal deepened with each echo of his voice. James squeezed her shoulder, reminding her they'd at least forced Thompson's actions into the public eye. "This isn't over. We'll keep digging," he promised. Still, the heartache was real. In that moment, Sarah felt the system might truly be too powerful to topple. Despite these setbacks, Sarah refused to surrender. She threw herself into her studies, determined to excel and aim for law school. Balancing family obligations, her father's medical needs, and her daily responsibilities at Fairpath Justice became a Herculean task. Sleepless nights turned into frenzied days, but every time she considered giving up, she recalled Thompson's smug face and the memory of him humiliating her in court. That, coupled with the haunting stories of people like Michael Evans, rekindled her resolve. Her efforts paid off. Sarah graduated at the top of her college class. Her name graced the dean's list for 4 consecutive semesters. Law school scholarship offers poured in from institutions seeking students committed to public service and civil rights. With help from Dr. Carter and James Carter, she secured a spot at a prestigious law school in the city. The shy, wounded girl who once sat in the defendant's chair was now on her way to becoming a lawyer who could challenge the system from within. Law school was tougher than Sarah imagined. The competitive environment, relentless reading assignments, and rigorous exams were daunting enough. But she also faced subtle discrimination from some classmates and even a few professors. Comments like, "You must be here because of affirmative action," cut deeply. Yet she channeled that pain into drive. She joined the Black Law Students Association, advocated for peer mentorship programs, and excelled in mock trial competitions focused on civil rights cases. Meanwhile, her father's health slowly improved. Though not fully recovered, he beamed with pride at her achievements. Lily followed in Sarah's footsteps, applying to colleges determined to carve her own path. The family was healing, not financially stable, but bound by love and resilience. Sarah savored every small victory: a scholarship to attend a legal conference, a mock trial, championship, an article she wrote on systemic racism, published in the school's law journal. In her second year of law school, Sarah took a judicial internship at the local courthouse under the guidance of Judge Margaret Hayes, an older but sharp judge. Sarah observed real cases, researched procedures, and assisted with legal research. Judge Hayes was known for her fairness and had faced her own battles as one of the few female judges in the county's history. She took an immediate liking to Sarah's tenacity and gently probed about her personal story. When Sarah revealed her aspiration to become a district attorney one day, despite being wrongfully accused in the past, Judge Hayes's eyes lit up with admiration. She offered Sarah advice. Never let your anger consume you, but never let it die either. Anger at injustice can fuel you. Temper it with your conscience, and you'll do great things. One afternoon, while Sarah was helping file court documents, she crossed paths with Officer Thompson again. He was at the courthouse to testify on behalf of another officer accused of misconduct. Spotting Sarah in a staff hallway, Thompson flashed the same irritating smirk. Still trying to fix a system you barely understand. He taunted, "Let me tell you something. Ms. Brooks, people like me stay on top because we know how to play the game. You'll never rise high enough to touch us." Sarah's heart pounded with fury, but this time she refused to back down. She locked eyes with him. "Enjoy your moment," she replied coolly. "Because I'm coming for you. One day I'll be in a position to make sure men like you answer for everything you've done." Thompson laughed, stepping closer, until she could smell stale coffee on his breath. I'd love to see that he sneered, then walked away. That evening, Sarah returned to her small apartment, textbooks scattered across her coffee table. She tried to focus on homework, but her mind swirled with frustration. The system's cruelty weighed on her like a suffocating blanket. Could she really make a difference? Or was it a naive dream? The memory of Thompson's smug laughter haunted her, and for the first time in months, tears streamed down her face. She called James Carter, now a close friend and mentor. His calm voice on the other end reminded her how far she'd come. "You've got the right spirit," James encouraged, "but you need to stay focused on the game. Learn everything you can. Your day to claim justice will come." Sarah thanked him, ended the call, and spent the rest of the night poring over legal texts. The next morning she woke with renewed determination. In her third year, a curious development arose. Rumors swirled that the district attorney's office was seeking fresh talent, individuals driven to reform. Word was that the current DA, William Thornton, an old-school figure, was rumored to be nearing retirement. Some speculated he might endorse a young progressive candidate as a legacy move, a stunning departure from his usual tough-on-crime image. Sarah took a chance and applied for an internship at the DA's office. She never thought she'd be selected given her background. Yet after grueling interviews, she landed the spot. On her first day, she arrived in a sharp blazer posture, confident eyes alight with resolute intelligence. She was placed under the supervision of Ada Peterson, a stern but fair mid-level prosecutor, known for meticulous case preparation. Deep down, Sarah hoped working in the DA's office might one day give her the power to confront officers like Thompson, who abused their authority. She buried her personal vendetta, channeling it into a broader drive to seek justice for all victims. During her internship, Sarah stumbled upon a complex domestic violence case the DA's office was handling. The defendant, a wealthy businessman named Charles Harrington, was accused of assaulting his wife, Ada Peterson, was preparing the case. But odd obstacles kept arising. Key witnesses vanished. Police reports were misplaced. Even the wife, battered and bruised, seemed reluctant to testify. Sarah suspected external pressure. While digging through old police files, her heart nearly stopped when she spotted a familiar name in the police report. Thompson. He was the first officer on the scene and had written a suspiciously neutral account, contradicting the hospital's medical records. Sarah quickly realized Thompson might be in Harrington's pocket, or at least paid to downplay the assault's severity. She approached Ada Peterson trembling with anger, laying out the inconsistencies. Peterson was concerned. "We've suspected something like this, but having proof is critical," he said, scanning the files. However, Peterson cautioned Sarah to tread carefully. Harrington was well connected, and Thompson was known for intimidation. This was exactly the kind of corruption Sarah had sworn to fight. She resolved to uncover the truth, no matter the consequences. As Harrington's trial date neared, tension in the DA's office was palpable. Sarah assisted Peterson in drafting a motion to introduce evidence of Thompson's questionable conduct. If the judge allowed it, the entire case could unravel Thompson's past, forcing the jury to question his initial report's reliability. On the day of the pre-trial hearing, Harrington's defense attorney fought fiercely to exclude Thompson's record. Heated arguments erupted, Sarah, sitting silently behind Peterson, felt her palms grow clammy. In a suspenseful moment, the judge ruled they could indeed discuss Thompson's complaint. History, at least to a limited extent. It was a small but significant victory. Thompson was once again in the courtroom, locking eyes with Sarah. She could feel his rage, his condescending expression searing into her. That night, as she left the courthouse, she noticed him leaning against a pillar in the parking lot, staring at her. A chill ran down her spine. He stepped forward as if to say something, but she got in her car and drove off, heart pounding. She knew their confrontation wasn't over. In the days leading up to the trial, Sarah began receiving anonymous texts similar to those Michael Evans had endured. "Watch your back," one read. Another warned, "Stop digging, or you'll regret it." Sarah reported them to the DA's office, but tracing the sender was nearly impossible. Though fear gnawed at her, she refused to let the threat silence her. The turning point came when Harrington's wife, physically and emotionally scarred, secretly contacted Sarah. She confessed she was being intimidated, but wanted to testify if she felt safe. Sarah worked with Peterson to get her to a secure location. That courageous decision changed the case's trajectory. Witnessing Harrington's wife muster the strength to confront her abuser, and Thompson's cover-up stirred memories of Sarah's own humiliating day in court. Once again, she vowed to do everything to ensure women like Harrington's wife or families like the Evanses wouldn't face the system alone. The Harrington trial gripped the public tabloids, painted Harrington as a misunderstood philanthropist, while grassroots activists highlighted the case as proof of systemic corruption. The courtroom was packed with reporters, activists, and curious citizens daily. Sarah assisted Peterson with jury selection, carefully weeding out those who seemed biased toward Harrington's wealth. When Thompson took the stand, the tension was electric. Peterson began by establishing the night's events, questioning Thompson about the scene, the wife's condition, and his report's contents. Thompson recited his lines with robotic calm. Then, in a strategic twist, Peterson introduced evidence pointing to Thompson's questionable record. Under cross-examination, Thompson grew visibly agitated. He stumbled when pressed about prior excessive force complaints, particularly the hearing involving Michael Evans. Sarah watched from the second row, each breath a silent prayer that justice would finally prevail. Thompson's facade cracked. He snapped at Peterson, "I do my job. If you don't like how I do it." Tough murmurs rippled through the courtroom. The judge banged the gavel demanding order. That moment painted Thompson in a damning light. Harrington's defense team scrambled to control the damage, but seeds of doubt about the officer's integrity had been sown in the jury's minds. The jury deliberated for days. The city held its breath. Protesters gathered outside the courthouse chanting for a fair verdict. Others defended Harrington, claiming the trial was a witch hunt. On a late Friday afternoon, the jury returned. The courtroom, including Sarah, fell silent as the foreman read the verdict. Guilty Harrington was convicted of first-degree domestic assault. The decision was a seismic blow to corruption and prejudice. Harrington's face darkened, and behind him, Thompson stood, rigid anger etched in every muscle. It was a rare victory in a system that often favored the powerful. As the courtroom erupted in applause, Sarah exhaled in relief. She caught Thompson's bitter glare. Deep down, she knew he wasn't done. But for now, justice had prevailed. Shortly after the trial, Sarah graduated law school with honors. The Harrington case drew significant attention, with many crediting its success to Sarah's behind-the-scenes work. At her graduation ceremony with her father's proud smile in the audience, Sarah felt a surge of gratitude and purpose. The DA's office, impressed by her record, offered her a position as an assistant district attorney. ADA Sarah accepted without hesitation, seeing it as the next stepping stone to reshaping the justice system from within. Over the next year, she honed her prosecutorial skills, taking on smaller cases, building trust with the local community, and earning a reputation for fairness and tenacity. However, Sarah soon discovered not everyone in the DA's office supported her ideals. Some colleagues whispered she was too soft, that her focus on civil rights overshadowed the need to be tough on crime. The worst betrayal came from a coworker, David Reed, who secretly leaked case details to defense attorneys for bribes. Sarah stumbled upon suspicious case files and confronted Reed, but he denied everything and accused her of playing the race card. The DA's office quietly investigated Reed and eventually caught him red-handed. When he was fired, he spread malicious rumors, claiming Sarah had orchestrated the scandal to climb the career ladder. Though an official investigation cleared her, the emotional toll lingered. Office gossip could wound as deeply as any formal accusation. She tried not to let bitterness derail her mission. Despite internal conflicts, Sarah continued to shine over time. She prosecuted several high-profile cases with integrity and skill, forging alliances with community leaders and advocacy groups. Public trust in her soared, especially in minority communities that rarely felt heard or protected by the law. Around this time, rumors began to circulate. District Attorney William Thornton was indeed retiring, and the county was gearing up for an election to replace him. Several seasoned prosecutors and politically connected lawyers lined up to vie for the job. One name quietly emerged in conversations, surprising many: Sarah Brooks. Some argued she was too young or inexperienced. Others saw the spark of a reformer who could breathe new life into the office. When a group of community leaders approached Sarah, urging her to consider running for DA, her heart raced. At first, she felt unready, plagued by self-doubt. How could she compete against seasoned politicians and wealthy donors? But that old fire still burned within her. Memories flooded back Thompson's mockery, the courtroom's silence as she was humiliated, the sting of betrayal, the triumph of the Harrington trial. This wasn't just about ambition, it was about justice. She sought advice from her mentors, James Carter, Dr. Carter, and Judge Hayes, each encouraging her in their own way, reminding her that change sometimes required bold leaps, not just cautious steps. Her parents, though, worried about the campaign's toll, expressed boundless pride. Ultimately, Sarah decided to run. Her campaign would focus on accountability, fairness, and community trust. The election season was grueling. Opposing candidates branded Sarah as soft on crime, dredging up her old reckless driving charge to smear her reputation. The irony wasn't lost on her. The very injustice that propelled her into law was now weaponized against her. Still, she pressed on tirelessly, campaigning at churches, community centers, and town halls. She shared her vision for a justice system that protected the vulnerable, not just the privileged. Local media highlighted her confrontations with Officer Thompson, suggesting she held a grudge against law enforcement. Sarah countered by emphasizing her fair prosecution record and strong ties with honest officers who did their jobs with integrity. Yet the smear tactics wore her down. The campaign trail was a different kind of battlefield, and each day felt like a relentless fight for survival. In an unexpected twist, Emily, Sarah's cousin, reappeared. Now working for a different politician who supported criminal justice reform, Emily reached out, offering to leverage her connections to canvass votes in certain districts. Sarah was wary given their history, but Emily pleaded, insisting she'd recognized her mistakes and wanted to make amends. Emily argued Sarah's cause was righteous and deserved broader support. Sarah hesitated. The memory of Emily's betrayal still stung, but people could change. After careful consideration, she cautiously accepted her cousin's help. Emily's involvement gave Sarah's campaign a powerful grassroots boost. It was a surreal alliance, blending betrayal and redemption in a complex family dynamic. As Election Day neared, a scandal erupted. Another officer linked to Thompson was charged with police assault. Witnesses came forward claiming Thompson was also involved. Investigative reporters uncovered documents suggesting he'd engaged in cover-ups. The timing wasn't coincidental. Conservatives tried to bury the story to avoid further tension, but social media and community activists brought it to light. Sarah seized the moment. At a press conference, she didn't mince words. She declared that if elected DA, her office would thoroughly investigate all allegations of police misconduct, including those against Thompson. No one is above the law, she stated, voice steady, eyes resolute. It was a direct shot at Thompson's power. That night, her campaign headquarters received an anonymous call. Stay away from Thompson or face consequences. Sarah's staff begged her to be cautious. She pressed forward, undeterred. Election night was a fever dream. Sarah and her supporters gathered at a community center, anxiously watching results. Her main opponent, a prosecutor named Robert Ellis, had more corporate donors and several law enforcement endorsements. Early returns showed Ellis leading anxiety thickened the air. Sarah paced the hallway, recalling years ago when a vile officer nearly ruined her future in court. But as more precincts reported, the gap narrowed. Neighborhoods Sarah had tirelessly canvassed turned out in record numbers for her. By midnight, the race was neck and neck. Then a wave of late reporting precincts swung heavily in Sarah's favor. Silence blanketed the room as the final tally was announced. Sarah Brooks had won by a razor-thin margin. The room exploded in cheers. Tears and utter disbelief overwhelmed Sarah's knees nearly buckled. She was the new district attorney. In the weeks following her victory, local papers buzzed about a new era at the DA's office. Some praised Sarah's grassroots campaign, while others criticized her as a radical reformer. In the office, morale was mixed. A few veteran attorneys resigned, unwilling to adapt to her new approach. Sarah brought in fresh staff, some from organizations like Fair Path Justice James Carter, though preferring private practice lent his expertise to streamline the office's civil rights division. Her swearing-in day felt like walking on air, standing before a judge, and reciting the oath. Sarah recalled the day she stood in court as a defendant, a terrified teen on the brink of losing everything. Now she wore the mantle of power. She vowed never to forget the pain that led her here. Her first week in office, Sarah summoned Officer Thompson to discuss the pending investigation into police brutality. The day he arrived, she sat behind a polished wooden desk, files neatly stacked, the city's seal gleaming behind her. Thompson, forced to appear without his usual allies, looked uneasy. The arrogance in his eyes faded when he saw who sat in the DA's chair. She could see fury etched across his face, as if he still couldn't fathom that the girl he'd once humiliated in court was now his ultimate prosecutor. "I'm here about these false allegations," he said. "If you think I'll roll over, you're mistaken." Sarah leaned forward, fingers clasped. "Sit down." "Officer," she replied calmly. He hesitated, then complied. "We have evidence suggesting your involvement in multiple instances of misconduct. We're opening a formal investigation. If the allegations are substantiated, you'll be prosecuted." Her voice was even unwavering. He scoffed. "You think you can take me down?" "You're in over your head, kid." Sarah's lips curved into a calm smile. "I'm not a kid anymore, and I'm not taking you down. The law you claim to serve is—" For a moment, silence hung heavy. Thompson's fists clenched, but he could do nothing but glare. Sarah concluded the meeting, handing him official documents outlining his legal obligations and potential suspension, pending further investigation. As he left, she felt a powerful sense of justice, the culmination of the promise she'd made to her younger self years ago. Under Sarah's leadership, the DA's office launched a robust investigation into Thompson's past. Michael Evans, Harrington's wife, and others came forward testifying about intimidation, falsified reports, and racial bias. As internal affairs cooperated with newly uncovered evidence, it became clear Thompson's history of abuse ran deeper than anyone knew. Indictments followed. Despite efforts by his supporters to discredit the investigation, the evidence was overwhelming. The case against Thompson was a spectacle, with Sarah's team meticulously presenting each piece of evidence. Thompson's defense team tried to portray him as a noble officer, targeted by a political vendetta, but the victims' and witnesses' testimonies were heart-wrenching accounts of brutality, harassment, and blatant racism. The trial ended with a guilty verdict on multiple counts, including official misconduct and assault. Under color of authority, Thompson was sentenced to prison. The media covered it extensively. Some debated whether justice was finally served, or if Thompson was a scapegoat. But for Sarah, it was validation that the system could tilt toward righteousness when guided by those who believed in it. Not every victory came with a parade. The day Thompson was taken into custody, Sarah returned to her office, closed the door, and allowed herself a rare, private moment. Tears streamed down her cheeks, not just from joy, but from profound relief after years of pent-up pain and determination. She thought of her father, who'd nearly lost his life under the weight of these struggles, of Emily, who'd found redemption, of Dr. Carter and James Carter, who'd guided her every step. She reflected on countless individuals like Michael Evans and Harrington's wife, harmed by systemic flaws. This wasn't just personal retribution. It was about rebalancing the scales for all those silently suffering. In the months that followed, Sarah focused on building policies, emphasizing rehabilitation, equity, and community engagement. She forged partnerships with local organizations to promote restorative justice programs. Her approach was neither lenient nor vindictive. She held offenders accountable while addressing crime's societal roots. Gradually, public perception of the DA's office shifted. Trust blossomed where skepticism once reigned. Not everyone agreed with her methods, but a real dialogue began, and that alone was progress. Cases of police misconduct were handled transparently. Sarah also supported good officers, ensuring they had training and resources to uphold justice impartially. As a result, her detractors dwindled, replaced by cautious respect. The media dubbed her approach radical empathy. She simply called it doing the right thing. One ordinary afternoon, Sarah walked the same halls where she'd once trembled as a defendant lost in thought about a domestic violence case. She heard someone call her name Ms. Brooks. Turning, she saw an older officer who'd been present at her trial years ago. He smiled warmly and tipped his head. "I want to say, I'm sorry," he whispered, voice slightly shaky. "Years ago I didn't speak up. I should have. And now, seeing who you've become, I'm glad you didn't let any of us hold you back." Sarah's throat tightened. She nodded, tears glistening in her eyes. "Thank you," she whispered. "But I didn't do it alone. I had help from people who believed in me, and my own anger pushing me forward." They shared a brief moment of gratitude. How far she'd come, how much the world had changed, and how much work remained. That evening, Sarah visited her parents' modest suburban home, warmly lit from within. She found her father sitting in his armchair reading a newspaper. His health was now stable, his eyes bright with pride. Her mother was in the kitchen cooking Sarah's favorite meal. Lily, now in college, had rushed home to surprise her sister. They laughed, reminisced, and the sorrows of the past gave way to hope for the future. Emily joined them for dinner, a bit apprehensive, knowing the wounds of betrayal took time to heal. But Sarah greeted her with a hug, symbolizing the burial of old hurts. They talked about bridging political divides, about how families could fracture but also reconcile. The night ended with Emily embracing Sarah goodbye, promising to keep fighting for justice in her own way. That night, Sarah stepped into her old bedroom, which her parents had kept nearly unchanged. She glanced at the faded posters on the walls, high school trophies, and stuffed animals from her childhood. She spotted a photo of herself at 16 eyes, bright but unaware of the storm she'd soon face. She recalled the day Officer Thompson humiliated her in court, the agony of feeling alone, and the silent vow she'd made to change the system. Now District Attorney Sarah Brooks knew her journey had come full circle. It wasn't just her victory. It was a beacon for countless others, that no matter how hard the system tried to silence you, you could rise, resist, and ultimately transform it. Standing in the soft glow of her bedroom lamp, she whispered a silent prayer of thanks to everyone who'd helped her, and a promise to all those still awaiting justice. That promise carried her true mission to ensure any black girl humiliated in court could one day say, as she did now, "You couldn't break me. I'm stronger than you thought." Thank you for joining us on Sarah's incredible journey, from courtroom shame to triumph as district attorney. Her story reminds us that resilience and justice can prevail against all odds. If this tale moved, you please give it a thumbs up to show your support. Share this video with friends and family. to spread its powerful message of hope and change. We'd love to hear from you. Drop a comment below about which moment in Sarah's story hit you the hardest. Or share your own experiences with overcoming injustice. Your stories inspire us all. Don't forget to subscribe to our channel and hit the bell icon so you never miss another uplifting tale of courage and redemption. By joining our community, you're helping us amplify voices that deserve to be heard. Together, we can shine a light on stories that unite and uplift us. Thank you for being here, and we can't wait to share more with you soon.